This video is related to employee welfare and is the second video in a series of 4 on this topic. So it's worth checking the others as well, obviously. Here we want to talk about occupational health. Well, occupational health is concerned with employee work environments. A welcoming and calming work atmosphere reduces employee stress and encourages positive working. So right at the start, when we consider occupational health, we're considering the environment in which people work. We're looking at the sound level, the noise that that pervades the working place. We're looking at ventilation and lighting. We'll talk about these later, but we're talking about all of these issues that affect the working conditions of the employee. And a welcoming and calming atmosphere is one which will encourage positive working. Now, there tends to be an emphasis on workshop conditions or work floor conditions. It's not necessarily the case that occupational health applies to that only. It applies in office conditions as well. If the office is small, badly ventilated, poor lighting, poor equipment, even if it looks old and decrepit and in need of refurbishment, if it just has that look about it, it can affect the employee's work rate. It impacts on their perception of their working environment, and that affects the way in which they work. So a welcoming and calming work atmosphere reduces employee stress and encourages positive working. A work environment with, let's say, paintings and coloured walls and plants and comfortable seating areas all contribute to relieving stress. The company has tried to provide facilities for the workers in a way that enables them to function better. They relate to the organisation. It could be in the offices again. Just giving the office workers appropriate seating, giving them a nice place to work, will enable them to function more, to relate to their work, to concentrate, to do good quality work. So just simply changing the ambience, changing the environment can impact on the quality of the work and the work rate. It's important to identify and stop any cases of harassment and abuse and bullying and victimization. It's obviously the case that needs to be stamped out. And there are separate videos on this topic. But quite simply, people go to work to earn a living. They go to work to provide for their families and provide for themselves and look after themselves in life. They don't go to work and expect to be abused or bullied or victimized or harassed on whatever basis. So people go to work simply to earn an income, and they expect to be treated with dignity and fairness and have good working conditions when they get there, which are not hazardous but actually positively conducive to work. Occupational health is concerned with ill health due to workplace toxic substances such as lead, oxide, chlorine, radiation. It almost goes without saying that the company has a responsibility to ensure that the workers work in environments which are not hazardous. It's not right, it's not fair to expose workers to hazardous working conditions. Particularly so, of course, if the workers are unaware of the hazards. That is both unethical and possibly illegal, depending on the countries and so on. But there is an onus on the employers to provide information about health and safety in the workplace, in the specific workplace that's under consideration, and to ensure that it's free from substances like the ones I've just listed. Excessive work stress, either physical or mental, and putting measures in place to control the workload. It's wrong to work the workforce until they drop. It's wrong to exert the workforce, to put undue pressure on them to work continuously and to work hard throughout the working day, and perhaps without breaks and without facilities. That would be not human. It's not fair to the workforce. So putting mental pressure on, perhaps it is an office situation, perhaps they're working in the office and they have a lot of work to do, they're stressed, and they have to take home the work with them to try and complete it when they're at home. Time which they should spend with their families. But they move from the office to the home environment and then have to go away in the home environment, isolate themselves and continue working. That's not enlightened management. Making aware of substance abuse, such as smoking, alcoholism, and providing fitness and mental support for employees. The management should encourage the employees to have good lifestyles, and the management should try to provide working conditions which are conducive to good lifestyles and healthy living. And if the management is aware that employees are drinking excessively or using substances, they should try to advise them and try to get professional help to encourage the employees to change their lifestyles. I suppose there is more emphasis on doing this if the employees in question are key employees with particular skills and competencies that the organisation particularly value. But really it should apply to all employees, irrespective of their contribution to the company. And the management should try to support the employees of all ranks to try and lead healthy lives. Now, factors of ill health. Well, noise. Working in a noisy, high pressure with loud machinery can cause long-term impairment. Eventually, if people are subjected to high volumes of noise for sustained periods, it can affect their hearing. And again, the employees do not expect this to happen to them. They expect to go to work to earn a living, to earn some income which will support their families and themselves. They don't want to go deaf as a consequence. Required by the Noise at Work Regulation 1989, this is in the UK, workers must be protected by soundproofing in work areas and should use personal ear protection. So if the noise is excessive and nothing can be done about it, then ear protection should be made available to the employees. Hygiene, health and safety. Well, the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare Regulation Act 1992, again in the UK, requires sufficient provision for health and hygiene within the workplace. For example, the atmosphere should be well ventilated. There should be a supply of fresh air made available to the employees. It's a basic human right almost. This is something which is so basic we don't even write it down most times. But it's important to have a well ventilated work environment. And the room temperature, if it's in the office, it needs to be at a particular temperature because people are sitting, they're not moving. If it's on the work floor, if it's in the factory or if it's outside, uh, provision should be made to ensure that the employees can work at various temperatures, but work comfortably. Perhaps the provision of extra clothing or provision of shelters or whatever it is. The company must make the effort to try and accommodate the requirements of its workforce. There should be good lighting and heating facilities. It's important that the workers have adequate lighting, otherwise their eyesight may be damaged. And heating, as I said, it's important that the heating facility be adequate. People work well within a certain range of temperatures. If it's too cold, they can't work. If it's too hot, they may not be able to work effectively either. There should be clean and safe working conditions. Working conditions should be clean. It should be tidy. It fits with our thinking. We want to live in ordered societies and ordered ways of living at home, and we try to keep our personal effects tidy and cleaned up. So why not have the same approach in work? But it should also be safe working conditions. Electric connections should be well concealed or made safe, and there should be routine inspections for hazards related to, say, fire, and there should be practice runs and practice drills to ensure that the workforce can leave the building safely in the event of fire or some disaster or whatever. There should be good sanitary and washing facilities. People expect to be able to have a toilet available, and they should be able to wash their hands and maintain basic sanitary conditions. And the onus is on the employer to ensure that these are in place. There should be clean drinking water as well. Workers should be able to get some water if they require it. Humans drink water. It's a very basic thing that humans do. We need it, and the employers should make a provision for adequate, clean drinking water. There should be first aid equipment and a qualified member of staff. Accidents may happen. They may be small or they may be large, but there should be some member of staff or some members of staff qualified in first aid to enable first responder facilities in the event of accidents or whatever, whilst perhaps outside ambulance or medical practitioners are called in. But there should be trained members of staff in first aid, and there should be a good supply of first aid equipment sprinkled right throughout the organisation in convenient locations and well marked and maintained. Hazardous substances and work-related diseases. Well, staff training must be provided in the handling and storage of toxic chemicals. It's not intuitive how to deal with toxic chemicals. We're not born with this knowledge. They have to be trained. People have to be trained how to handle dangerous materials properly. They have to be given adequate training. There should be clear labelling, and warning signs must be posted to ensure that there is awareness of danger. Employees should be warned that certain areas are dangerous and perhaps contain substances which are dangerous, or there should be signs up so that the employees know to be extra careful in those areas. There needs to be appropriate recording of accident procedures, and as I said earlier, a qualified first aider. Records should be kept of accidents and processes put in place to try to ensure that those accidents cannot occur again in the future, that the organisation learns from accidents and ensures that it does not happen, that some change in the routines or more training or whatever it is that's required is put in place to ensure that the accidents don't continue to happen. Manual handling operations. Workplace injuries are very common in the UK. They're very common in most countries, in fairness. Organisations must make every effort to protect employees from injury. The organisations should carefully examine what they're asking of the employees to make sure it's reasonable, make sure it's something that humans can do easily and well within their capacity. There should be appropriate training and equipment to ensure that injuries are prevented. So adequate training is essential so the employees know how to go about the tasks safely. And there should be appropriate equipment. If there is a piece of equipment that will help in completing certain tasks and which will remove some risk of injury, that equipment should be acquired. It's important. The computer workstation. Well, computer workstations have caused major health concerns. For example, repetitive strain injury, or SI. Now this is when people perform essentially the same functions over and over and over again. It could be data entry, or it could be typing. But they're doing the same function perhaps hours and hours at a time, and after a while their joints, the joints in their fingers and their wrists, their elbows and so on, their whole body in fact gets locked into that position. So when they move naturally, when they move to perform other functions, their body aches, and eventually RSI can become a chronic condition. They could be in pain and discomfort long term. RSI cause over half of the UK work-related injuries. The injuries are caused by poor work practices. Perhaps the workstation where they're based is not properly set up. The appropriate equipment is not in place. Or perhaps they're not given sufficient time after certain tasks to come away from that workstation and perhaps do some other activity which will vary their working lives, and then they can go back and work again at the workstation. But they are not performing the same functions over and over repetitively. Organisations must ensure sufficient training is provided on posture and stretching exercises and regular breaks. There should be appropriate chairs, for example, for employees in offices who are engaged in what essentially could become repetitive strain injury places. So they should have proper chairs and proper seating facilities that enable them to sit upright and perform their tasks without running the risk of getting this injury. Appropriate equipment must be provided to avoid injuries, such as armrests, display screens, desks and keyboards, all designed to prevent RSI, repetitive strain injury. Implementing policy. Well, ensure all hazards have been minimised through risk assessment. Hazards have been avoided where possible. The organisation should conduct regular audits of its procedures, regular checks, and perform a risk assessment. What's the likelihood of problems arising from various activities within the organisation, and then try to avoid these, try to anticipate the injuries or the problems and try to avoid them before they arise. Awareness about hazards have been communicated through information, education, warnings, postage signs, inspectors. Try to disseminate the information as widely as possible that there are risks in certain areas, and try to meet those risks before any injury has been encountered, before anyone has developed a problem. The use of safety equipment such as clothing, ergonomically designed workstations and safety equipment should be encouraged. The company should make sure that it knows what is safe working practice right throughout the industry and right throughout the economy for that matter. It should be aware of developments in health and safety. It should be aware of the latest thinking and the latest designs in security for individuals working under hazardous condition, to give them secure working conditions because they have got the latest, let's say, clothing, which will help them to work safely. So it's important that the company makes an effort to know what the latest innovations in health and safety are, and try to find out what good practices from elsewhere in the economy and apply that. Implementing policy. Well, appropriate training provided for all employees on the use of equipment and chemical substances. So it's important that the company first of all determine the risks, what are the risks, understands the risks and where the risks are likely to turn into incidents, and then make sure that the employees are adequately trained and make sure that they know what to do in the event of something happening, something untoward happening. Employees are encouraged to cooperate with health and safety policies and follow procedures in case of hazards. If the employees are being paid on a bonus scheme, the employees may themselves cut corners in terms of health and safety because they want to get the bonus, they want to get the higher salary or the higher rewards. So the employees should be made aware of the need for good working practices on their part as well. And the employees should report any issue that they feel may arise relating to health and safety immediately to the management, and it should be taken seriously by the management and investigated straight away. Effective monitoring and recording of hazards and workplace accidents and illness. So the company should keep good records as to what the employees are reporting in terms of hazards, accidents and illnesses and so on. It's not just picking up generic statistics like absenteeism or reports from the line managers that employees are not working effectively or whatever. It's not that generic. They should look for more detailed statistics on particular processes to see if a particular process is hazardous, if it has caused injury, how many injuries has it caused in the last month or the last year, what remedial factors have been put in place, how has the company tried to fix the problem. And the good records should be maintained by the company relating to this. Essentially, the company should make every effort to respect the employees and ensure that they are working in safe environments. So these are some of the issues associated with occupational health. As I said, this is video 2 out of 4, and it's important that you go on to view the other videos as well. But that's all we're going to deal with here. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.